What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Hopefully you are doing well, wherever you may be in the real world. I'm John. This is the Three Now Podcast. And here to talk a little football because we had a sudden retirement. Frank Ragnow, the Pro Bowl center for the Lions. I want to dive in to just some overall thoughts on some of these guys retiring in recent memory, younger in life. CJ Stroud not able to practice because of shoulder soreness. Is it something or nothing? Tyler Guyton says that he wasn't good last year, the Cowboys' first round pick. And I think he falls under the category of listen, it's hard for highly drafted projects in year one on teams with high expectations. That's why the offseason is really, really big for players like that. Josh McDaniels had some quotes on Drake Maye. Uh, Big year for Josh McDaniels, I would say, to gain some credibility back on that he can do it without Tom Brady and, most importantly, William Belcichick and thrive with a quarterback that he has no experience with and a coach that he doesn't know. So a couple quick thoughts there. Tom Thibodeau got fired as well. And man, I think sometimes when you're a big time famous coach in football or basketball and you just get these blinders on, sometimes, that front office, those personnel can be backstabbing you with ownership. And all of a sudden you just lose a job and they're just like, they're the ones making the statement. It's crazy how that works. So a couple quick thoughts there. But before we dive into some football, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. Trying to talk my beautiful wife into go into the Sphere with me so I can see Kenny Chesney. Not quite sure that's going to happen. So I might have to figure out a way to get there. I don't know, maybe invite someone else because I really do want to go. But if you want to go to anything, we got baseball in full swing. We got the College World Series is just a couple weeks away from going to Omaha. That's an incredible event. Obviously, football season this fall. You want to buy a ticket to any game, concert season, any festivals. You want to go, watch some live music, which no one ever complains about doing. Obviously, comedy shows. Game Time's the best in the business. Search by event, search by team, search by artist. You can search by price point in the venue based on whether it's the field, whether it's the stage, anything you're seeing. It doesn't get any. I've used them all, and it by far is the best ticketing app I've ever used. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN, JOHN, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I always think when a player retires, quote unquote, randomly, especially when there is, the car situation had gotten, let's say, toxic between the new coaching staff, mainly the new head coach, him. They weren't on the same page. It clearly got weird. And I do think that I would imagine we'll see when quotes come out, when Dan Campbell finally gets in front of a mic or Brad Holmes, the GM, that they would have been in communication over the offseason with Frank Ragnow, their starting center. And let's face it, one of the better interior offensive linemen in the NFL. It's always a little jarring when you see a guy just choosing to quit at 29 years old. Now, I think what makes pro sports in 2025 so much different than I would say the previous, we could even go the last 10 years, but anything before that, is the money is so outrageous. It really is. Frank Ragnow's 29 years old and he's already made $57 million. So even if you factor in after taxes, he's taken in net probably, I don't know, well over $30 million. And he lives in a place that, no shade to Detroit. And obviously they have some high end places, but isn't Manhattan or Newport Beach. So his money's going a little bit farther. And I do think that makes or gives guys the opportunity when they're in a lot of pain. Because the one thing with football is we've all been critical, and I'm guilty as anybody, is being like, this is not the NFL I know. This is not the sport that I grew up loving. This was not the sport when I was in high school. It was just vicious. You could take out anybody. The Ronnie Lotts, the John Lynches, the Troy Polamalu's, the Ray Lewises. That's my NFL. It was a much more violent game in the open field. That is true. Can't touch the quarterback anymore. That's a fact, which I do understand from a business perspective. But when you're watching a game, when it's your team, when you're betting on a game, and they throw a roughing the passer penalty on a quarterback hit that is like hitting him with a pillow, it makes you want to puke. I mean, it really does. But the one area where you can still be really violent and an area in which more and more elite players have come into the league over the past decade at defensive tackle, let alone defensive end, is the line of scrimmage. And the speed, the power, the size of these humans it's crazy whenever the combine comes around and you see the measurables on the defensive linemen in the league. And Frank Ragnow said, like, I've tried to talk myself that I'm not into a lot of pain, and at the end of the day, I just do not feel right. And if you look at his injury history, he's had a bunch of injuries over the course of his career. And you do not become a Pro Bowl level player, a high end player, a first round pick, a guy that is just, one of the better players at your position at offensive line if you are not a tough son of a bitch. Like, no one can question your toughness when you play center or guard and you are a high end player at that position. So I'm going to take him at his word that the pain and the worry about, like, this might not work moving forward, right? And Jason Kelsey talked about this when he retired. Like, could I keep playing? Of course. Now he was much older than Ragnow, but I'm in so much pain when I get out of bed every morning, not even counting the season. I'm talking about the off season. And I do think it makes it easier to make life decisions when you have a lot of money in the bank and your family is secured and you're not going to have to worry about anything. Is it unlimited money? Is it enough where you couldn't blow it if you did some stupid things? Of course not. So, but is it more money? Are you immediately in the top 1% of the 1% with having millions upon millions of dollars in the bank? You can look at things a little bit differently. And it has to be difficult to make this decision. I think if you're the Lions, I've said this before, and I still believe this today. Now, it is more difficult in this spread offense version of college football, this transfer portal world we live in. I always thought that guards and centers are the most replaceable. Now, when you get Pro Bowl guys, it is hard to find another Pro Bowl guy, but the drop off of just finding another center who can function is much smaller than if Panay Sewell retired. It's like, what do I do at tackle? It's like, yeah, you can be screwed. I see it with the 49ers all the time when Trent Williams gets injured. It's like, what do we do? And the answer is there's nothing you can do because your swing tackle can never just step in. The Lions over the last couple of years have actually had a pretty good swing tackle, but it's why their offensive line's been awesome. But for the most part, like, there's a massive drop off with your third tackle than giving a guy that your starter, especially when that starter is a high end guy. But I think we've seen, like, Derek Carr 30 years ago is still playing football, right? But he's made over $200 million. It's like, you know what? I'm just kind of over this. Not dealing with the politics of this business. And Frank is like, you know what? 30 years ago, when again NFL players were still making a lot of money in the 90s, they weren't making life-changing, generational changing money when you were the center in 1987. You keep playing because Frank, hell, he could make $10 million this upcoming season. Hell, he could hold out because he has no guaranteed money left on his contract and surely get a raise. I mean, he's scheduled to make like $9.5 million in actual cash. I bet he could get that number easily up to 15+ million dollars. But you're like, it's not even worth it to me. I don't even want to deal with this. And who knows? He's young enough that maybe in a year, maybe he's feeling better, that he gets the itch. And trust me, there would be either the Lions or other teams willing to scratch that itch. But I think a huge element of these decisions, even going back to Calvin Johnson, I think Barry Sanders' decision was strictly based on this franchise fucking sucks. This is not fun. This is a miserable experience running around and never winning. I do think the guys that we've seen in recent memory have factored in pain and I'm super rich. It's just not worth it. Patrick Willis had the feet. I think Calvin Johnson had the feet as well. Derek Carr has this messed up shoulder. Those are just ones that come to mind. It's like, you know what? I, I don't need the money anymore. Aaron Donald. I mean, Aaron Donald's still kicking ass and taking names. He's like, I've already banked $100 million. I'm good, dog. I'm out. I've already accomplished everything I've set out to accomplish. I still feel good. I see some of these clips. I saw an Instagram reel of Aaron Donald lifting. It's like, Jesus, guy looks fantastic. He looks like he'd make it all pro this season if he came back. I would actually bet on it. But it's like, you know what? It's not worth it to me because football, more than these other sports, like baseball, you just play every single night. You don't practice. Take a little BP and you play. Basketball, if you're on a good team by like Christmas, you don't practice at all either. I don't think LeBron James teams have practiced in like a decade. So like football's the one sport where you practice and mentally practice with meetings and rehab and working on your body and lifting way more than you get to play. I say this all the time because I think it's one of the great quotes of all time. Ray Lewis saying, "You pay me Monday through Saturday. Sundays are for free." Because playing football at any level, if you played in high school, if you played Pee Wees, if you're good enough to play in college, the games are the fun part, right? It's everything else that sucks. And I think it's made these decisions for some of these guys that could I battle through a couple more years of this pain for another $20 million, which most humans would do? Well, it's easy to go, yeah, it's not quite worth it when you've already made millions of dollars. And I think that's really the number one factor here. The NBA Finals are here, and this is your last chance to bet on the NBA until next season. And the DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is pulling out all the stops to make it a finals to remember. One team will be crowned the champ, and the other will be lost to history. Who you got winning it all? Obviously, everyone's picking the Thunder. Not going to lie, don't hate dabbling a little on the Pacers. 5-1 to win the series. It's the NBA Finals. They just destroy the one seed, the Cavs, work the Knicks. I think people are sleeping on the Pacers a little bit. I get the Thunder are good, but I think people are underrating the Pacers. All season long, DraftKings has been the go-to spot for NBA player props, and that doesn't stop now. Who you got carrying their team to the chip? Try placing a bet on your personal MVP to drop 30, 40, or 50. I would expect obviously Shea, but definitely Halliburton to have some big games. Ready to place your first bet? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Lock in your bets and finish the season as a winner. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers, bet $5, win $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Don't miss your last chance to bet on the NBA season. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code John. That's code John for new customers to get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. CJ Stroud is not practicing because of shoulder soreness. I would say it's a little concerning. Mainly because this is a big time of year where the on the field stuff is easy, but it's really learning the offense and repping the offense when you have a new coordinator. I might not even talk about this for more than a minute if Bobby Slowick had came back and they had cohesion at it's like, well, he's had the same offensive coordinator for 3 straight years, but they fired that guy. They have a new offensive coordinator. So even if they're going to run some of the same base offense, which I would imagine they're going to keep a lot of stuff in there, and who knows, maybe they run a very similar playbook and it was just the offensive line sucked. But not being able to practice because of shoulder soreness is a little alarming and makes me a little nervous if I was a Houston Texans fan, because this should be the easiest time to practice. Like sometimes that happens in training camp. You're throwing a lot. You're fatigued. We see it all the time. This time of year, I mean, you should be able to make enough throws in your sleep. So there's a lot of pressure on this guy. He had an incredible rookie season last year. I mean, they were a team that I might have sprinkled a little money on to be the number 1 seed. That they were really, really underwhelming. I actually kind of think this year could be a bounce back season because we know their defense is going to be good. Their offense is just a little bit better and they can run the ball and they just stay a little healthy and they block a little bit better. They clearly have a good quarterback, but sometimes I don't know. This is just something to monitor because you don't just, precautionary reasons like, no, this is shoulder hurts. I guess that's a problem. So it's just a lot of pressure on this guy. And now, if he's healthy, they not only should be the heavy favorite to win this division, but they should win a lot of games Division sucks. So I was excited about the Texans last year. I think everyone was too, and now I think everyone's going to pivot off them. I'm going to pivot back, but it makes it a little bit harder to feel confident about that when CJ Stroud can't even throw a practice June 3rd. I saw Josh McDaniels had some quotes about Drake Maye and coaching new guys, and sometimes screwing up in practice is better than having a good play, especially in OTAs, because you can coach off of it. And that's how you can really improve, because every guy, it's much easier to learn by doing on the field. And when you screw up, it's easy to hammer that home. And when you go to training camp, and I started thinking, there is no disputing when Josh McDaniels was with Brady, especially that stretch when he came back in the 2010s. It was remarkable what they did. A lot of that time, Gronk was pretty beat up. Their best wide receiver was Julian Edelman, who's a stud. I love Jules, but I mean, don't get him compared to, like, he's not Randy Moss or Jerry Rice or Justin Jefferson or anything. They had a lot of random running backs. They had, you know, solid offensive lines, but a lot of that was being coached up by many would consider the greatest offensive line coach of all time, Dante Scarnecchia. Obviously, Jeff Stoutland's making a push to join him in that category. But, like, that doesn't exist anymore. Dante's retired. Ernie Adams isn't giving you notes every week. Bill Belichick is at North Carolina. And Tom Brady's not playing quarterback for you anymore. I thought when the Raiders hired Josh McDaniels, I believed in it. I thought it was going to work. Not only did it not work, it was a historic failure. He's the only guy to not make it to year two, or, through two seasons in multiple spots in the history of the NFL. The guy was fired with Denver and then the Raiders in the middle of year two both times. It's crazy. It's like, it literally has never happened. Now, he's not the head coach. He's the offensive coordinator. But, like, he had a pretty good, we talk about infrastructure a lot with quarterbacks, right? Like, how lucky Jalen is to have such a good GM, to have an owner that's willing to pay for coordinators. His head coach is supported with great offensive assistant coaches. He has a great offensive line. Jared Goff has had Sean McVay. Now he's got the Lions and their infrastructure. Like, you need help. You cannot, you don't control your personnel. You don't control the scheme. A lot of stuff is out of your control. Well, like, a lot of offensive coordinators go to jobs and the quarterback sucks. Their line sucks. Their head coach doesn't know what he's doing. It's like, well, you get Mike Vrabel. I know he knows what he's doing. But Dante's not there to coach the offensive line anymore. And Bill Belichick isn't there to hold your hand. And I bought into this. But I do think it's pretty important for Josh McDaniels, if we're going to take him seriously, like, I think the Patriots should make the playoffs. And I think they should win 9+ games. Their schedule's easy. We know their coach is good, and we know their defense. We saw 2 years ago with a lot of the same players, and they've added some guys this offseason. It's going to be pretty good. But offensively, like, what's Josh doing here? What's he like when Bill's nowhere to be found? Because we've seen him as a head coach when Bill's nowhere to be found. It's a fucking tire fire. Like, it's a crazy, it doesn't get any worse. We make so much fun of some of these guys, and it's like, just because this guy's more buttoned up and, more articulate, like, he's kind of Jim Tom Sule, right? It's kind of, like, pretty ugly. Think of some of Joe Judge, who's a McDaniels guy. But just think of some of these scenarios that we just made so much fun of. Josh can just handle himself a little bit better in front of the media, that he doesn't get that treatment, but his results are kind of like that. Now, when he was with Tom, they were ass kickers. And what they did in playoff games was, I'll never forget, as long as I live. That second, iteration of their 3 championships was incredible to watch. And they did it with a lot of guys who probably aren't going to be in Canton, Ohio. So I'm pretty excited to watch, what Josh McDaniels are we getting this year? Are we getting the guy that most considered one of, if not the best offensive coordinator in the league? Or are we getting the guy that actually was all Bill and Tom? I don't know the answer to that. Interested in investing in Bitcoin, but not sure how to get started? With the Gemini credit card, you can dip your toes into Bitcoin without even trying. Just spend like you normally do. Groceries, gas, or even a night out, and instantly earn up to 4% back in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account with no annual fee. The Gemini credit card is a no-brainer. And right now, you can grab a $200 Bitcoin intro bonus. Go to Gemini.com/card to learn more and start earning today. Terms apply. Again, go to Gemini.com/card and start building your Bitcoin stash today. Terms apply. The Gemini credit card is issued by WebBank. In order to qualify for the intro $200 crypto bonus, your application must be approved by June 30th, 2025, and spend $3,000 in your first 90 days. Terms apply. Some exclusions apply to instant rewards, in which rewards are deposited when the transaction posts. This content is not investment advice, and trading crypto involves risk. For more details on rates, fees, and other Gemini credit card terms, see rates and fees. I saw that Tyler Guyton, who was the Cowboys' first round pick, said that he was terrible last year. I mean, essentially, I'm not verbatim, but it didn't go well. Now, granted, they drafted him. He was a project, and it can be overwhelming when you're a project and you're thrust into a situation, especially for a team like the Cowboys. But I do think for a lot of guys that didn't just have like seamless rookie seasons or seasons that by the end of it, you're like, God, like Jared Verse. No one's questioning, like, is Jared Verse any good? Or Quinyon Mitchell with the Eagles. It's like, these guys are just good. You know, this is just a player. Like, this guy's a player. A lot of guys, like, pretty up and down, right? A lot of guys, like, is this guy good? Is this guy going to be one of our cornerstone pieces? We have no clue. That's where the off season for players like that is enormous. You know, because when you're a rookie, I saw, I think, a headline that Mason Graham, the guy the Browns took number 5 overall from Michigan, like he didn't look good in rookie minicamp or OTAs. Like, guys, do you understand that most of these players, especially a bigger guy, let's say an offensive or a defensive lineman, they have not been training. Once the combine ends, they start flying around. They're just meeting with people constantly. They're eating shitty food. They're completely out of their routine. And a football player, it's almost like someone in the military. Their life is very buttoned up on a daily basis. They know minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day what they're doing, from on the field to off the field to training to eating. It's all kind of mapped out, especially when you're at a big time school like a Texas, a Michigan, Ohio State. Like it's pretty regimented. There's not much just screw around time for weeks on end. And I'm not saying these guys screw around during the draft process, but they're just being flown all over the place, meeting with people, and you're not really working out. And I think sometimes, like, it's then you get to a place, you're trying to learn the scheme, you're trying to learn the coaches, you're trying to learn the name of all your team. There's a lot going on. And I think anyone that has an awesome rookie season, that's impressive, right? Most guys, if they have an up and down rookie season, that's kind of par for the course. But your second year, like, you get the whole off season, you get a lay of the land, you know your building, you know, especially in a place like, even for Tyler Guyton, while he has a new head coach, the new head coach was there, so he has a relationship with Brian Schottenheimer, and you just kind of know your way around. And it's a time when you really can hone in on your craft. And I think the offseason, especially for offensive and defensive linemen, uh, are huge on the fundamentals. And for an offensive lineman that's a project, the way they get good is, and this is boring, and this is not something that would, you know, if you broke it down on a daily basis, no one would listen. But the fundamentals of playing offensive tackle is like make or break the success of 99% of people. There's a small group of guys in the history of the league at tackle that can just kind of get away with, like, yeah, step was off, but Orlando Pace didn't matter, right? Walter Jones, Trent Williams, like it's Jason Peters tripped, got up and threw the defensive end 7 feet the other way. And that's not normal. Most guys have to be fundamentally sound. And the way you build good fundamentals is, you know, in practice, but specifically right now when you can really, really hone in on it. So I think there are guys all over the league, young players. And it's not even just first round picks. It's guys that made the team, it's guys that played all over, you know, second, third, fourth rounders. This is a huge, huge time of year for them. Other than that, you know, Tibbs was fired. I met Tom years ago when I was doing radio. I used to go to a lot of Warrior stuff, and Tom, I think it was after he was fired by the Bills. You know, Steve Kerr was big on bringing these guys in, and just they would hang out, and he was around a lot, or at least for a couple months. I remember it might have been before Durant got there. So it might have been like 15 or 14 with the Warriors. And I remember just BSing with him and talking to him for a while. He's a good guy. Easy to talk to back. That was a decade ago. But he got fired today. And he obviously led the Knicks to their best season in 2.5 decades. And I think one hard thing as a coach, and I would say this in football and in basketball, and you could say this in baseball too. The difference is in baseball, they got a ton of managers making like 900 grand. Like in basketball, a guy like Tom or any top coach is making millions of dollars. Obviously, the head coaches in the NFL are making huge cash. They are so tunnel vision with their team, especially late in the season in the playoff run, that there's not a huge political element to the way their job is built. Their only focus is try to win games, deal with their assistants, and deal with their players. Now, you got to be a little political, I guess, with your players, especially in basketball, maybe a little more in football. But like that's your focus. Where a GM's job is actually much closer to just like a normal corporate job in terms of running a huge budget. Their budget happens to be the salary cap. You know, you negotiate a lot of contracts. Hell, you negotiate a lot of your coaching contracts. And I think that leads to just natural backstabbing because at the end of the day, I would say 99% of executives could never coach. They don't even have the capability of doing it. Two, they wouldn't have the personality to even attempt to do that. And they wouldn't want to do that. I mean, part of being a good coach is wanting to help other people, right? Like you do have to have some level of patience to be a good coach, right? Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll to, basketball coaches from Spo to Kerr or whatever. There has to be some sort of balance. Whereas an executive, you can just be very cutthroat. It's why what Bill was able to manage for 20 years was pretty incredible. Like, because he had to coach the guys and get to know them, but they also knew that, like, he was in charge of their money and he could cut you, fire you, trade you at any moment. Like, Andy's always had a GM, so he could always kind of play the role of good cop, bad cop, which is probably the healthiest thing to do. It's like Spo in Miami. He's got Pat Riley to play the bad guy, right? It's really, really hard, especially in this modern day with the amount of money that's on the line, of like doing it yourself. And I think when I see that he gets fired, it's like it's so easy for executives to point the finger at the coach. And listen, sometimes maybe he should get fired. Maybe there is a better option out there. But I just think you see it in the NFL a lot during the season. And Michael Lombardi used to talk about this all the time. Where do most GMs sit? They sit next to the owner in the suite. Well, even if you're a good team, you're losing 4 or 5 games. I mean, if you're a shitty team, you're losing well over half your games. What do you think the vibe is? Think of you as a fan when you're sitting on your couch. If your team wins 6 games that season, how angry you are most of those Sundays. Well, what do you think those guys that work 70, 80-hour weeks that pick the players are telling the owner? Good things or bad things? It's why they're always pointing the fingers. And some guys get that reputation. Trent Baalke has it really bad, that he is the ultimate backstabber. But I think most guys, intentionally or not, just naturally kind of lean that way because it's survival. It's why, honestly, it's kind of impressive that in the Giant situation, that Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, and maybe I've missed it, there haven't been like super explosive articles of like one guy tried to backstab the other guy. And maybe that happened or maybe it will happen. But it feels inevitable when you lose that it happens. When you win and it happens, man, that shows you that there are some people in there that I don't know if you could trust.